and I see a lot of doctors, lawyers that they're worse than the athletes. And they're worse because they know, like, they're going to make, if they continue to do what they're doing, they're going to make the same amount of money next year.
They're not worrying about a second contract.
No, they can work, and they can work till they're like 60, 70 years old.
Yep.
Right? So they're reckless.
Welcome back to episode 25 of Cashed In. Today we're joined with a special guest, Kevion Latham, who is a certified financial planner who manages athletes, high net worth individuals, coaches. Kevion, how you doing today?
I'm doing
Thanks
well.
for being here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, so we're interested in your story. Obviously, you guys have a personal relationship. Michael, if you want to touch on that.
May or may not be family members, but so, Kevion and I go, we go back, a long ways, even not even just as it relates to family, obviously, but, from a professional realm, you were obviously that first person that, really played an influential role with me as it relates to investing, right? I remember being a 24-year-old kid right out of college, and, I got a job with Horizon at the time, and it's like, okay, I was making more money than I ever made. It's like, okay, well, I was spending it all. My output was just crazy. I had no budget. And Kevion was really the person that, I sat down. He's like, all right, let's map this out. You need a security fund. You need to budget this. You need to, before you even get into investing, you need to have these different factors and buckets filled, right? Before you get to anything.
Look at him now.
Look at me now.
Look at you now. I'm cashed in.
Yeah. So maybe just like, tell our viewers, like what's your background, kind of like, where you're from. Obviously, I know where you're from, and then on to like your professional career.
This is our first time meeting, so
yeah.
Where are you from? What's your story?
Yeah, so I'm originally from a small place in North Carolina called Robertsonville, North Carolina. I grew up there until I was like 8, and then I moved with my father when I was 8 to Greensboro, North Carolina, which is like it's about an hour and a half northeast of Charlotte. So it's just a bigger city. Where I'm originally from, where my family still lives, my mom's side of the family, it's like just a country town, like one stoplight. It's nothing out there. So very humble beginnings, but that's what kind of gave me my foundation. I ended up leaving North Carolina. I went to Penn State in 2007. Played football from 2007 to 2010. While there, I was able to get my finance degree, and I moved to Pittsburgh in 2011, working in corporate banking at PNC. I hated it, but it was not a means to an end. I learned a lot, right? So, but I always knew I wanted to be a financial advisor, and so just networking, right, in Pittsburgh, it's a huge Penn State alumni base, and was able to get connected with a guy that was a former player at Penn State that was then, or probably still is, the managing director at Merrill Lynch. I was able to connect with him, and the rest is history. So that was in 2012. So it's been like 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
10 years now. That's crazy.
So what was it about being a financial advisor that intrigued you most about it?
So I really didn't know like what I wanted to do. Like when I was at Penn State, you have to basically declare like your major or what school you're going to go into like after your sophomore year, right? So I originally went to Penn State to be an engineer because I love math and kind of like solving problems and stuff like that. But probably, as you know, very quickly, once you get on campus, it's football, then school. So I had to change my major, and my father is an entrepreneur in the entertainment business. So,
So tell her the people that your dad was responsible for. Wait, didn't he form
like Bernie Mac, Steve Harvey, and Cedric the Entertainer?
Wow, so legends.
So is it Def Comedy?
No, the Kings of Comedy.
Kings of Comedy.
Okay.
So like all the legends.
Those are very familiar names. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, my dad, he made a when he was 27, and that was the movie.
That's so
pretty
cool.
wild.
Yeah, that's like a classic. I think I've seen it. I've heard of it. They reference it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
All
like
the
that
time.
first like major movie. So, so yeah, I saw him kind of do that from nothing. Like he didn't go to college or anything, so he just had a high school degree. He had me at 17, so I had like no excuses, you know. So, anyways, yeah, I ended up just wanting to major in business because of my dad. You know, seeing the lifestyle that he had worked toward and kind of afforded me and my siblings. And so at Penn State, if you're going to go into the business school, you got to have a certain GPA to get into finance, accounting, MIS. And so finance, it was like the highest. So I was just like, I'm gonna push myself to do that. And it was cool. So like during that time, the financial crisis was like going on. And so as we were, learning about stuff in class, like it was actually happening
in real time.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So I wish I would have bought Netflix and Google. And
Crypto at that point.
Instead of buying
you could have bought
fucking Jordans. Dumbest thing ever. Yeah. That's another story. But and so financial advisory, right? Like when you're at Penn State in finance school, they're really big on like going to like Wall Street, right? So we got like our own like stock trading floor and the ticker symbol and all that kind of stuff.
You went to Wall Street? They brought you up there?
No, so they had this thing called Wall Street Boot Camp, where like only like a select few, finance majors. It was like kind of like a camp almost, right? And if you like completed this camp, the goal was if you completed it, they would give you like this list of like every Penn State graduate that works on Wall Street, like contact information, like a bunch of stuff. And so it was hard to get into, but I was able to do that with football. And so that was my goal, right? My goal, honestly, like I really took a liking to mergers and acquisitions. During that time period, I think Disney had just like bought Marvel. And so I just thought that was like super.
Yeah, because that was the beginning of all the Marvel movies, the 21 movies. Exactly. I'm a huge Avengers fan.
Yep. So like I was like super interesting. But again, my sophomore year, my roommates were these two guys that were getting very heavily recruited by agents and advisors because they were going to the league. One ended up being like the 11th overall pick in the draft, and another one he was a lower pick, but he ended up being like a 5-time All-Pro. And so, anyways, like going through that process and seeing them, it's just just gave me my passion for because they needed help. They didn't have a clue of what was going on. These agents and stuff, they were kind of just like selling pipe dreams. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, honestly, it was just unauthentic, right? Like these guys who were, and I told you the names, you'd be like, oh my God, but like they were like piss poor, right? They didn't have, I used to, players. They, like one of the guys, he used to borrow my shoes. Right now he's like freaking worth.
This was in college, or this was after?
This is in college.
This was in college.
Yeah, so they didn't have they didn't have anything, right? They would send money back home, whatever money they had, and so I always just thought it was weird. Like, once like guys started doing well on the field on Saturdays, like all of a sudden, like these random people would show up, right? The agents and advisors. No, they would just show up. Like as soon it was like, where were you like 5 months ago when like my buddy needed money?
Yeah.
Now he's doing well on the field, and now you're like, you want everything to do, with him. And so again, I just thought it was like unauthentic, and so that's why I'm very prayerful. I'm very faith based, and so I knew I wanted to do something in sports, but also obviously in finance, and I felt like God was like telling me like this is what you need to do. I need to empower myself, with the financial tools and capabilities so I can then empower my brothers, right? Because, football is hard in college, right? Waking up at 5 a.m, training table, school, film. And so, like, just seeing all the things, like to the naked eye, regular fans only see what happens on Saturday. They don't see what you actually have to do to get to the point where, these NFL teams, want to pay you millions of dollars. And so by me going through that with them, I just thought it would be just more authentic if I, again, empowered myself and then empowered my brothers. And so that was kind of my passion.
So you're with people at the beginning, right? When they don't even have anything, where they're borrowing your shoes, and then you see them take off like a rocket ship where now they're worth multi-millions.
Mm-hmm.
And does that help with the trust factor, I would assume, where they're like, I've got a fortune now, you're going to advise me on what to do with it?
Yeah, I mean, those like guys in particular I don't work with, but I think it's like more so just like I don't know, just the characteristics, like my character. Like I said, I come from nothing. So, just like, obviously I like nice things, but I feel like sometimes, you can let those things define you, you know? And so I think with the athletes in particular, I feel like I'm good at what I do because I can speak from experience, right? So like, I've had like a lot of my teammates that have had like other financial advisors that they worked with prior to me. They would always say like, this advisor just like, he talked at me instead of like talking like with me, and it's very like discouraging because you got to think about a lot of these guys are like super insecure, right? They don't know what S&P 500, is. They don't know what a bond is. They don't know obviously, more people know what stocks are, but they don't know this lingo, right? Yeah. A lot of these like, wealthier advisors that work at, the Merrill Lynches and the UBSs, like they come from money, right? 9 times out of 10. So like they grew out of the womb, like knowing what financial literacy is, right? So
did they prey on that? Do you think some of the
yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, you take advantage. I mean, that's capitalism at its best, right?
Yeah, they see the opportunity. Yeah,
it's true.
It's just you praying. It's just. I guess it's more sexy, because they're athletes. But I don't know. Just being in this industry for 10 years, it's just interesting to see. It's not only athletes that need help, but just like Michael said, like obviously he's super successful now, but he had to start somewhere, and I see a lot of doctors, lawyers that they're worse than the athletes. And they're worse because they know like they're going to make, if they continue to do what they're doing, they're going to make the same amount of money next year.
They're not worrying about a second contract.
No, they can work, and they can work till they're like 60, 70 years old.
Yep.
Right. So they're reckless, and so, and a lot
reckless
of those,
in terms of spending, you're saying?
Yeah. Because they know like, all right, I'm going to make it next year.
As long as they don't lose their medical degree, they're good.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, but they need help too, right? A lot of like, and I was always like super, I don't know, like confused not confused, but just taken back by like how a lot of executives, they need help, financial help too, because sometimes they're only focused on like what their job entails, right? They don't really know about, what we do on a day-to-day basis. In my eyes, I would assume like, hey, this guy, he's a freaking executive at PNC. He has a CPA. Like you would assume that he like knows, has all his things put together on the financial side, but typically it's not. So it's pretty cool.
So trust is kind of at the root of a lot of what you do, right? So at what point, obviously you're directing them down different paths. I know that you're big on 6 months. Like a 6-month security account,
Emergency
right?
Fund, yep.
Emergency fund. So, at what point do you sit there and do you start guiding them down the path of like real estate? I know that you have some clients that you have, whether coaches or players, that have kind of dabbled in it. At what point do you think that people are ready for that?
I think as far as like being ready, it's making sure that all the other, I guess, sectors in their financial plan are, intact. And then it's also just like figuring out what their goals are, like me personally, I feel like another thing that makes me different, and you've probably seen this, or you have too, is that like a lot of people in the financial industry, like if you do insurance, like a lot of insurance salesmen think like insurance is like the end all be all, right? They don't like the market at all, right? And then some advisors just like, the market is the end all be all. And even in real estate. And I'm one of the guys that were like, and I think that was, one of the things that helped me out when I got my CFP is it made me become more of a holistic planner, right? I had to see things from just like different points of view, from obviously an investment point of view, from a tax point of view, estate planning, retirement planning points of view. So it just kind of opened my eyes up. Like, hey, like investments aren't like the only great thing to help your assets grow, right? Insurance is a great component, right? Especially, you know, having a term when you're young and then converting that term to whole life, and you know, having that thing build cash value over time is a great, you know, asset, right? That you can tap into for, you know, tax-free, you know, income. And then real estate is just, for me, I love real estate because somebody always taught me, God isn't making, you know, the world bigger, right? So like real estate is what it is, right? We only have so much land we can develop. And, you know, with a lot of these, you know, coaches and athletes, they get so much money up front, you know, in a short amount of time, is that you got to figure out how to navigate them, obviously, through that time period, but also get them accustomed to living a certain lifestyle, right? It's hard to, you know, eat at freaking Prime 112 and then you're broke and you got to go to freaking Ruby Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's not
brutal.
You're not going to want to do that. And so just figuring out, all right, how can we create a sustainable budget now, right, to help you last until you retire and you can tap into that pension and 401k. But, you know, what are some other different, you know, resources that we could help to generate that cash flow, right? So like with a lot of like coaches, for example, they're starting to make a lot of money. And so while they are making a lot of money, obviously we're, you know, setting up the emergency fund, you know, we're putting, you know, allocating money to the investments, to their retirement, and they get great benefits, right, because they're state employees. So making sure that we're overfunding their, you know, 403B plans, 457 plans if necessary. But then also like sitting down with them and saying like, all right, when you retire at, you know, 55, you know, what's your lifestyle going to be? Like, how much money do you need a month? Is it 10 grand? Is it, you know, like, what is it, right? And so one of the things that, you know, we always encourage any retired is paying off debt, right? So making sure that, you know, your mortgage is paid off, because typically what I've seen is that when people retire, their biggest expense is their primary home, right? And so when these guys are making that much money, it's like, dude, pay your primary home off, have it on your book as an asset, and then the other rental properties, because I hate debt.
That was my next question.
I hate debt.
I was gonna say, how do you view debt?
I hate that. I don't think, you know, one of my clients says student loans is like good debt.
Oh, no, I won't say. We just talked about this. So
okay.
How do you view, well, you and I did, about good and bad debt.
Oh, yeah, we did.
So you hate debt in which form?
I hate, obviously, credit card debt is the worst. And I know that from experience. And again, I think that's another thing that helps me with a lot of like my clients is like, I've gone through things like being in like $30,000 of credit card debt.
Yeah.
Right.
Same.
And making like $1,500 payments, and only $200 goes to as a principal.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Like,
how do you climb out of that hole?
A lot of praying.
Yeah.
A lot of praying.
Yeah.
And making more money. But no, just not setting yourself up for failure. And so going through that, and like, I mean, when you're in that position, it's like you're really like a slave, right? You're a slave to
the debt.
To debt. And it's a terrible, just just a terrible place to be in mentally.
Drowning. I mean, I was there when I got out of college. I had all these different credit cards. I went to Diesel probably every Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. Just getting White Room. Shout out Mike DeSimone.
Oh my God. I remember that. I remember that room. I forgot about that.
So yeah, and that's actually where I met my wife.
Yeah, so it wasn't a bad investment.
It wasn't bad. Yeah, right. So
it worked out.
Yeah, I'll tell myself that. So I guess you know, as it relates to debt though, in real estate, right? Or even like your primary residence that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Taking out a home equity line of credit, right? I know there's a balance there as it relates to like being over leveraged as it relates to like real estate particularly. But how do you advise your clients to, so if they're sitting on a chunk of money in their primary residence, do you advise them to just let that ride out, or do you advise them to tap into that depending on the rest of their other assets, if they have other cash reserves and that sort of stuff that they can invest? But would you advise a client to use a home equity line of credit on their primary residence to buy additional real estate that's producing passive income?
Yeah, I mean, again, it goes back to, you know, all the other pieces of the puzzle, right, that's going on in our life. And if it makes sense, then of course, right? Using your asset, right, and taking that home that HELOC out to buy something that's going to generate income, right? But then going a step further is that mortgage that's on that rental property. I like that type of debt because that's debt that somebody else is servicing, right? So it is obviously it's debt on the books, but you're also getting a stream of revenue that's coming in that's servicing that debt, right? And eventually, you want that mortgage or that rental property to be an asset on your books.
Right.
I mean, that's how you started out.
Exact same way, yeah.
So and you just got to continue to build off of that. One thing again, and Michael knows, is I'm super conservative. I'm really cheap, and I think that's another thing that helps me out on my job.
Yeah.
But I've been told to say I'm very efficient.
Frugal.
Yes.
Frugal. I think efficient sounds better.
But it's tough, especially when you see a lot of people like that went through the whole 08. The market crash. Yeah. People were just over levered. You see it now with Bitcoin, right? A lot of these cryptocurrency companies, right? We literally just went through that not even 10 years ago, and they're doing the same thing, right? They're over leveraging themselves based on this, which Bitcoin is.
You don't mess with. You don't advise anyone to.
I can't. I technically can't. It's not regulated. Right?
It's true. So you can't even. Well, I would imagine they've talked to you about it, though, right?
Oh yeah, I've had a ton of clients.
Does anyone buy it? Do they still buy it?
Yeah, they buy it on their own, right? They ask me,
Hopefully, they didn't buy it at like 70,000.
Do you have crypto?
No.
Oh.
No, I got burned a couple times on it.
Oh, did you?
Good. Yeah. I'm good. I'm not playing in that arena again.
I bought some Ethereum. I'm up right now.
I got some crypto. I mean, I had the FOMO, but I didn't put a ton of money.
I didn't put crazy. It was my play money. Yeah,
but it's way too volatile. I just
it's backed by what? There's like no data. There's no history. Of no clue what's going on.
That's my thing. Is like
pull the rug out.
It contradicts everything that I'm like.
Yeah.
Trained on your experience.
Well, that's like me telling you to buy property in Web3 or the metaverse. Yeah. Let me sell you this house in the metaverse.
I think it is going to be something eventually, but I think a lot of, we call them younger retail investors, they put their money in that because they saw how much other younger people were making, or just people in general were making, and they all got burnt. Yeah. Right. And now you see a lot of, I just saw a report, a lot of younger investors aren't investing right now.
Because
which
they
should be. Yeah, because they got burnt 2 years ago.
When was that piece of data? Was that recent?
Literally it was on Robinhood.
Well, because that's why I was gonna ask you that. So I would have assumed that over COVID and then into 21, the markets were doing well up until last December.
Last December,
right?
Yep.
So I would have assumed that a lot of that was driven by retail investors buying stock on, Cash App and on Robinhood and on, all these different SoFi, all these different platforms, right? Mm-hmm. So like now you're saying that it's kind of shifted because I would imagine they probably thought it's going to just keep going up, 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 up. They weren't ready to take their bumps and scrapes. Mm-hmm. So when they did, they sold and they're like, I don't want to, is that?
Yeah, I mean, now people are like nervous to even put money back into the market.
Yeah.
Right. And so.
People are very skittish. They feel like it's doomsday is looming
to happen around. What people have to understand is like it's not like anything that's too good to be true is typically too good to be true.
Yeah.
And so like when I got caught a couple times. I got a couple group texts that I was involved in, or still involved in during COVID, because everybody was bored, right, and thinking about ways to make money, and everybody was getting free money, and I put my money into some stocks that just didn't make sense,
like AMC and GameStop,
like Snapchat. Which I still love Snapchat, obviously, but I'm one of those like kinds of guys like I don't try to recreate the wheel, right, and so like with Snapchat, my buddy's gonna pick on me. I just see all the millennials, they use it.
They do as their instead of getting your number, they get your
iMessage.
They don't use
they're like, what's your Snap? And I'm like,
they don't use iMessage. They snap everything.
Yeah.
So like my thought process is like, if all these kids are on that platform, they have to be figuring out a way to make money. But I just think like the valuations just ran up way too high, way too fast.
Yeah.
And so like a company like Snap, I still think it's gonna
Slow and steady.
Yeah, I think it's gonna make it, but
They have to have they have to have a lot of ad revenue. I sit there and I find myself looking at like this is just like that's why I had to delete the app because I was finding myself like on the news, like there's like Snap News on there.
Yeah.
Right. And I subscribe. I don't know why this is really weird, but like chiropractic sort of stuff, like people getting like cracked and all that stuff.
I watch it on TikTok.
People getting their neck, and I'll do it. And guess what? There'll be an ad that pops up every like 30 seconds, and I'll sit and look at some mindless ad.
Yeah.
And I'll let it go, and then another ad comes up, and I find myself like, they just made a ton of money based off of me just sitting there like
letting it run.
Letting it run.
Because they have that clickbait story. They're like, oh, they'll tell you, lead it up to like the climax. I'm like, 30-second ad. I'm like, oh, I got to hear the rest of this random stupid story.
It is like strategic. So like, I do think that, I like their model, but
and so, but they're getting crushed right now, right? If you bought them at 60, it's like $10 now.
Is it $10?
Oh,
yeah, it ran up way too.
And
heavy.
so, and I would say a lot of companies did that. And so, even with a lot of my bigger athlete clients that started in 2020 investing, their accounts were up, right? 2020, 2021, obviously, now they're down. And so for them, it's just I'm actually glad it's happening because it's a real like teachable moment.
For
right?
sure.
Like, dude, like your account's not always going to be up, but we got to extrapolate it, right? You don't need this money. You're 23 right now. God willing, if you stay on budget and your cash flow is disciplined, you're not going to need this money for the next 7 years, right? So, this really doesn't matter, right? This is the time where you need to be buying low, selling high.
Right.
We need to continue to dollar cost average and buy these lows. They're great companies that are on sale, right? I always equate it to, like, again, talking with them, right? It's like, dude, like, if a pair of Yeezys were freaking 30% off, you probably would buy a couple.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And so, the difference between what's, Yeezys and Apple or Amazon, right? Everybody uses Amazon. And so, looking at companies like that that aren't going to go out of business, that are making a crap ton of money, like those are the companies that you need to be stacking shares, right? And then once it comes back and bounces back, that's a huge win.
Yeah, totally.
It's society at this point, everyone
it's
wants.
It's all conditioning. Just conditioning in your mind. Because
it does
suck.
A life coach. You're more of like a life coach to a lot of these people in a way.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's not that that's necessarily what you signed up for, I'm sure, sometimes. But I mean, I think that you're guiding them in different facets. And I think that it's important because, I mean, even just to bounce a piece of advice off somebody, they're sitting there and they're hearing all these different heads talking at them, telling them they got to do X, Y, and Z. They're hearing their boys tell them X, Y, and Z. And it's like, all right, let me see what Kevion has to say about this. So like, as it relates to like even real estate, right? Like I know that you have some people, I don't know how many clients you have that own rental properties.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a handful or just?
Yeah, I got a couple coaches that own rental properties and a couple.
So did they come to you like before they purchased those homes?
They'll shoot the idea to me. Like my one buddy that I work with, he bought his first property in like 2018. And he's a coach, right? So he coaches in New Jersey. I mean, he coaches in Texas, but he's from New Jersey. So he bought his first property in 2018, and then the next year, and that's our goal, right? He makes a pretty good living for himself, but our goal is to replicate his income, right? So when he retires at 55, his lifestyle doesn't have to change, right? Yeah. And I believe that obviously investments is one way to generate that dividend income and be able to tap into that. His retirement, right, is one way, but I think one of the best ways, another way is real estate, right? To get that passive income from rental properties. And so our goal was just to build his real estate portfolio. So he came to me, I think in 2019, and he had what was it? It was 4 units. Quadplex.
Yeah.
He had a quadplex that was for sale, and drove out to Jersey. We looked at it, did our due diligence, and he's had it for 3 years, right?
Yeah.
But it's been hard, right? Because he bought it during right before COVID, right? So I always tell a lot of people like the rental, thing is cool. Like I feel like a lot of people make it look cool, but it's not easy,
Yeah, no, it's
so you got to have
be challenging.
The right property there's the right property management in place. You got to have the right, just the right team, right? Because everything's about communication and again, just figuring out what do you want to accomplish out of this. And
Did he have tenants that weren't paying over COVID, or
he just
when you say someone bought a property in 2019? In my head, I'm like, oh, they must have benefited from all the appreciation that's happened.
I mean, he's definitely benefited from appreciation, but
he definitely made out. He's making out on the property.
He's making out on the appreciation of the property, but just dealing with the tenants that didn't want to pay, wasn't paying before even
you don't
before
manage
COVID.
You don't manage that for him, do you?
We have a property manager that helps out with that, but because he's a coach,
he's literally
he doesn't have time to deal with the property managers and things that are going on, and so that's where I step in, where I'm like constantly coordinating and communicating with the property management company, making sure rent's coming in, making sure the mortgage is paid every month, making sure that the insurance is the right insurance for the dwelling, and coordinating all those things and making sure that it's actually happening, right? Because I'm in PA, the rental properties are in Jersey, the clients in Texas.
Like a triangle almost, yeah.
Yeah.
So
communication, like you said,
it's key.
It's vital.
It's key. So, but thank God it's starting to.
It's starting to weather the storm.
Yeah, it's doing well. So
how do you view REITs then in the grand scheme of things? Like as it relates to invest, do you have any clients that might not necessarily have wanted to purchase a property and go through being a landlord or even just having that type of exposure, but still wanted exposure into the real estate sector as a whole?
Yeah, I look at REITs as like just like your typical just like ETF almost, right? So something that if you want to be obviously in a diversified portfolio, I think again real estate should be have some kind of place in that portfolio. So I just think REITs is an efficient way to help accomplish that goal. But it just doesn't. It's not like the sexy, right? It's not the sexy way to get into real estate. It's kind of just like, all right, I see the ticker symbol, and I can explain ad nauseum what this means. But when a guy can go and see and physically touch and put his mother or sister into their property, they feel more. I don't know.
Attached or involved. Yeah.
Right.
And they can tell their boys and their friends, like, hey, I own this, rather than like saying I own.
Yeah, I own this symbol here. See on this paper.
1/1,000,000th of a REIT.
It pays out a great dividend.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of is just like a stock.
It is. Yeah, you're just.
Do you have an investment that you favor? Like, oh, this is happening, so I'm going to put my money here. Like, what gets you like, oh, this is happening? Like, what's the excitement investment for you?
Investment wise?
Yeah, like to me, I'm like, oh, this property's cheap. I'm running here,
See, I'm going to answer this for Kevion. You want to know what Kevion he said this to me probably in like 14. Yeah, and he was like, I remember, it's crazy because it's like, I shouldn't know where I was sitting in that moment or where I was. I was in the Fox Chapel, like Market District parking lot, and I was sitting there looking at stocks, and at the time, like we had just bought Square. I don't know if we bought it yet. And he goes, he's like, look, the way that I look at like analyzing a stock or a property is, what is it that everyone's using? Like you just said about the Snapchat. He would talk, so he started talking about Starbucks, right? So like that, and that was 8 years ago. Now look at how far Starbucks has come along even since then. Square at the time was just, I don't know if they had just IPO'd.
Yeah.
So they just IPO'd at the time. So now look at them, even though they've gotten beat down over the last.
I hope you sold at 228.
Huh?
I think it went up to like two something.
It went through the moon. That and PayPal both just went sky.
I think that's like Square is like my because of that.
That's your
right?
yeah,
dude.
Yeah,
I think it's needed, right? Like you go to everything's about being like an entrepreneur or small business, right? So like I just went to go see my basketball trainer for my kids. He's a small business. He doesn't have like a huge POS system. So what does he use?
Cash App?
He uses Square, right?
Square, okay.
Yeah, my hairdresser has it.
Yeah, he plugs in it. Yeah, exactly. So like, again, just looking at all those dynamics and seeing like more people wanting to not be, the employee. They want to be the owners. And I feel like that's where our generation is going. And so that's where I saw like a huge opportunity in Square.
So you identify utility.
Almost. I don't want to say like common sense. Just
Efficiency.
just looking at what people are doing and just trying to put two and two together and figuring out like, all right, where are these trends gonna lead?
So what are you Hawkeyeing right now? What do you see as the next potential?
What's the next Bitcoin?
Yes. What is that?
The next Bitcoin.
No.
I'm just kidding.
What's the next, like, oh, this makes sense. Like, this is going to evolve how we do business.
Well, I still think Square is one of those like companies. I mean, right now I feel like it's still cheap. Right? I don't know what it is today, but I think it's below like $100. And so I really like Square. People hate Facebook, but I think Mark Zuckerberg is a genius. And again, I think somebody taught me this. Actually, a guy here in Pittsburgh when I was trying to help counsel a client in like venture capital. He taught me. He said it's not about the product, right? It's about the person who's running the company. Mm-hmm. And that's why I told this guy this too. Is I remember this conversation because I was driving in New York.
Dorsey?
No, Elon Musk.
Oh, about Elon.
Tesla. Remember I told you to buy? Yeah, I told him to buy Tesla like 200 before it split.
Before it ever ran up and split. This was around the same time.
And just like I remember he came out with this, like I said, these renderings of going to Mars. And like they were like so real. And I was like, this is like going to really happen. Like, he's really going to like do this, you know? And so like just that belief and like, and having somebody like even think out there, you know, and like make it happen. I'm like, dude, you want to be a part of whatever that guy's doing. Right?
Yeah.
And so and that's what I told him. And he was like, oh, Tesla, they're not making any money right now. Yeah. They're losing. And I was like, all right.
Yeah. Then I buy it post split. Still doing well.
And then you buy a Tesla. So
I bought a Tesla.
Works out.
Right.
Yep.
It worked out.
So yeah, okay. I'll go back to just Facebook. I think really, and I just I heard this off of research, but I think Meta is obviously Instagram, Facebook, but what I think is really in Meta is like ball cap is WhatsApp. Right, a lot of people don't think about WhatsApp.
Europeans love WhatsApp.
Yeah, they do. I don't know why.
They're
scared of
WhatsApp.
Well,
I mean, because it's basically like it's like
untraceable.
It's like a telephone system, right? You can call, you can text anywhere in the world.
Traceable though, like is it?
I'm sure
I don't know.
traceable.
Oh, okay.
But
they might have.
My international clients introduced me to it. The only way I could talk to them is on WhatsApp. Yeah.
So I mean, they have that, and I think they bought it for nothing, And so I feel like once they start really pushing that, when they need to, I think it's going to add a ton of value. Amazon, right? Amazon is just like I feel like our day and age is
like a necessity now.
It's Walmart, right?
Yep.
And they just split, so it was $3,000 to get in. Now it's like $120, $140, and so those are my like kind of like just like stable, just kind of make sense, trades or and you want to be involved in, right, those companies. And I always tell people like. We go back to like my comment about like Air Jordans. Like I used to freaking stupidly, I used to collect Jordans, right? It's the dumbest thing ever.
You still sell them.
Well, I did actually sold them, but I mean, I always tell people, especially like my younger kids that I mentor, just think about, for every pair of Jordans you buy, think about like if you were to buy stock in Nike, right? And so I had done that analysis that from the time I think I started collecting in ninth grade, from like ninth grade to I don't know, like 10 years later, I would have had like $200,000 in like Nike stock if I'd have bought stock instead of Jordans. And so I say all that to say like invest in what you're using, right? So if you're using Amazon, if you're going to McDonald's to eat, invest in like the things that you use, so you're essentially like paying yourself back.
Yeah.
So how does I'm going to take this a different angle here. So how does you obviously deal with a lot of high net worth individuals, right? Mm-hmm. High income earners on paper, right? Well, W-2, you know what I mean. So how do you tax preparation has to be critical for these individuals, right?
Mm-hmm.
They make a lot of money. So real estate obviously is one of the best, I would argue, is one of the best tools to be able to offset, that income.
Mm-hmm.
So at what point, I know that you said that it depends on, where they're at in that process. Do you feel like, first off, do you agree with that? that real estate is one of the best vehicles to be able to offset.
Yeah, like depreciation, right? Depreciating your properties.
Yeah, you have the write-offs, you have all those different things. Obviously, it gets to that point. So, like for example, you have an individual that, or even as it gets into they get into retirement, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all how can you shelter. In my opinion, it's how do you shelter as much tax-free money or tuck as much tax-free money away as possible. And I think that real estate, that provides you the ability to be able to do that. You see these individuals. We were just talking to somebody before this. She had an individual that would he make $30 million? He made $30 million
and
paid
paid $1,700
in tax
because of 4 layers of depreciation.
You have all the different layers of depreciation, all that stuff. So I think that for your clients, maybe not the 23-year-old, 24-year-old, right? You have a coach that's in their 30s, 40s, that sort of thing. Do you think that you would be more inclined to sit there and be more proactive in discussing real estate with them due to the tax benefits as it relates to real estate, or do you think that kind of sticking to
more
sure passive?
I think again, it just has to it has to first come with what their goals are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously nobody likes paying taxes, and so with a lot of the coaches, they do make W-2 income,
mm-hmm.
right? So it's very hard to get away from not paying those taxes when they're automatically coming out of your
Just take
paycheck.
a loss on a property. That's what I did in my first year.
Yeah. So again, it's figuring out what their goals are, what they're trying to accomplish, and then based on kind of that that foundation, figuring out ways that we can help to mitigate their tax exposure. So again, I think real estate is one of the ways where you can help mitigate that tax exposure and also build up your assets on your balance sheet.
Mm-hmm. Right. So then how do you view it personally then? Is it something that you want to get more involved in? I know we've talked a little bit. Do you see yourself potentially getting into more of like the buy and hold, like multifamily properties? Do you see yourself maybe dabbling in more of like a short-term rental as relates to investing?
All the above. I think, for me personally, my goal is to build, $1 million real estate portfolio, and obviously just, learn from you guys. But I think starting off, like I think you said, like with a duplex, right, and kind of just building it from there. I don't know, what God has in store for me,
mm-hmm.
but the commercial side, right, I think is something that I talk to a lot of my clients about, right, because when I just tell them like, hey, look, go to that Starbucks or that CVS, like somebody owns that whole plaza, right? And CVS is leasing that space for 20 years. They're paying rent for 20 years.
Oh yeah, commercial leases with anchor tenants are huge.
So,
everyone wants to be around them too.
Yeah,
it's like
they bring the retail or other business in. They have to have that anchor tenant.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, like I said, I think real estate is king, and it's pretty cool, especially in our area, in the Pittsburgh, the northern Pittsburgh area. One of the first individuals that I met when I moved to Pittsburgh was a guy by the name of Gary Wilson, and he owned a company called Langholtz Wilson Ellis that was then acquired by Howard Hanna.
Yeah.
And so one day I was in Butler. This is probably like 4 or 5 years ago. And you guys know Butler, like it's nothing out there.
Yeah,
it's pretty quiet.
And so, but I kept seeing like all these signs, like these Howard Langholtz Wilson, like I'm like, why are they even out here? And now 5 years later,
is this out like on Route 8?
Like Cranberry?
Yeah,
Like Butler?
Route 8, yeah.
Is that the Butler you're talking about, or are you talking about like New Kensington Butler?
Well, I think that whole like the surrounding like area, I just everywhere I was driving, I just saw their signs, and so I went. I had a conversation with them.
How long ago was this?
This like 4 years ago.
Okay,
probably like 4 years ago, and the Gary, he said he didn't tell me what was going on, but he said he just had a big smile on his face, and he one of his first he and his partners, one of their first properties, not first properties, but one of the properties that they own was it's a Shop and Save on Freedom. Like,
okay.
So Shop and Save,
CVS.
all
that over there, yeah.
Sincerely Yogurt.
He owned that?
They own that land, right? But they owned it before 279 went in. But they knew once 279 was built, that whole area was going to boom because 76 ran through there.
Super convenient.
And 79.
Yeah, that's wow.
But they sat on it for like 20 years.
Is that what they meant? What they mean when people say they widen the highways for that area over there? And the meter development came in?
Oh, yeah, right there. Yep.
They built 600 homes there in 2019.
They're still building right now.
They're still building.
And I heard, actually, I can't remember his name. One of the Lawrence County commissioners was just talking about, he just gave like an update.
The young one?
The young, what's his name?
Morgan?
Morgan, yeah, Morgan. Jeez. Yeah, so he was just saying how like in Butler, he was talking about the surrounding counties as it relates to like Lawrence County, Beaver, Butler.
Yeah.
And obviously, kind of, having words with, different officials within Lawrence County because of the lack of development and
World
economic.
money goes?
Yeah, right. Did we talk about this?
Yeah.
So in Butler County, he was saying that he said there's like 40 to 50 different active development projects going on in Butler County right now, which is like 40 to 50. Obviously Cranberry being I would assume a big part of that, but around like Route 8, like all along there, I mean, there's all
homes going up everywhere.
They're going up everywhere. It's
So
all
like
going down
City,
228 onto Route 8.
Is that what you're talking about?
So you're going down. So you go down 228, right? You could either go left onto Route 8 north up into Butler, or you could take 8 south to Pittsburgh, down to like Shaler and Gibsonia, Allison Park, Shaler, that sort of thing. So when you sit there and you think about that, like, I mean, the money that's in developing, and developing these
money.
There,
that money brings money.
But just think about like how long, people had to sit on that land and pay taxes on that land.
That's true.
Until somebody came out, so.
So so who you said bought that? Was there a group of individuals or?
Yeah, I mean they're like a company, right? So
they bought this 20 years ago?
I think it was like 3. I mean, don't quote me on
Maybe
it.
Maybe even longer.
Yeah, he bought it. They bought it up. They bought it. I don't know when 279 was completed, but like if you look up that date, they owned that land like a couple years before that highway was completed.
Yeah.
But they saw the vision even before then.
Was it? I wonder if it's just because like you had the city and then the surrounding areas. Was it Wexford back at that time? I wonder. Yeah. And then they just built then it just kind of expanded more north. I'm assuming.
Well, there's more tax benefits.
Obviously in Butler County, but
Allegheny.
At that time I would have assumed that it was just all rural farmland.
Yeah, it was.
Cranberry. Yeah.
I mean, 15, 20 years ago, Cranberry was all farms.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I was saying. Yeah. So I guess, but I would assume that at that time, like you had like the North Hills and that sort of stuff that was more developed, but Seneca Valley wasn't a thing back then.
Yeah, and 376 wasn't a thing.
Right. I think you just took 665. It's crazy. Yeah, that's
what I love about it. They just built a corridor, or they're building one from Washington County. Yeah.
Wait, what are they doing? From Peters?
From Peters to the airport.
See,
to the airport.
I say all the time because I go down there when my old boss lives.
Like Montour, right? All that kind of like moon.
Yeah.
They're gonna go all the way out.
It's gonna go all the way. So there's no good way to get to Peters Township.
No,
none.
It's horrible.
It's terrible, but it's one of the most beautiful.
It's
gorgeous. It's a great school district. The homes are beautiful. It's a great area, but just logistically where it is, and Washington County. I think it's Washington County taxes too, right? So, but there was just no good way to get there, especially from the airport. So now they're building something.
It's done.
Yeah, it's
done.
Corridors. Yeah, I have people who want like logistics centers there because it's going to be huge. They can see, history is an indicator of the future. What's going to develop?
So this is all down South Pittsburgh.
Yeah. And Washington is not Allegheny, Texas.
Correct. Yeah, and that's a draw for people that want to move into Peters.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The homes are a little bit more. Or are they more?
What, Peters?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a lot of wealthy people live there.
I don't know if there were a lot. I didn't know how that balances out. You have less taxes. I don't know if that home values are a little bit higher.
Maybe they
the
just
taxes
haven't
being a little bit.
They just haven't got to it yet with regulation. Who knows?
Yeah.
Because at Pittsburgh, they did their reassessment, I think, in 2012, and that's when transfer tax went to 5%.
Yeah.
So they just maybe haven't gotten to it yet.
That makes sense. But this was good, man. I really enjoyed having you on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you want to wrap things up?
Yeah.
Yes, we.
Kevion, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for watching Cashed In.